Hey everyone, welcome. We'll just give it a quick moment for everyone to roll in. Thanks for joining everyone. We'll get started in a quick moment. Lots of familiar names in here. How's everybody doing today? Maybe just to kickstart the chat, if you want to let us know who you are, where you're joining us from today, that'd be great. Looking forward to meeting you all. Hey,
Awesome. Hey, Alex.
shout out to the InCoho team. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Anastasia.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining. We're probably good to kick off, Adam, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I would like to thank everybody for coming and attending our Accelerating Agency Proficiency webinar and Procedureflow's first webinar of 2024. My name is Adam Kane. I am Procedureflow's social media and community engagement specialist. And I would like to introduce you guys to our host today. Jaclyn Lowe is our very own Director of Customer Success. She's a dynamic leader in the industry who has years of experience fostering user adoption, promoting teamwork, and helping cross-industry customers achieve effective remote onboarding, operational consistency, and workforce agility. And without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Jaclyn to get things kicked off for us today.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm super excited for the opportunity to talk about proficiency with you. I guess most recently in my role as Director of Customer Success, I really have a lot of privilege in meeting and working with a large variety of our contact center leaders. We get exposed to multiple verticals, and so we get a chance to kind of hear, what's working really well and where are those opportunities that tend to present themselves throughout an agent's onboarding experience and just their life cycle throughout being an employee within a particular department. And so a lot of that time, they really kind of come to us early on and ask, well, how can we actually make that easier? Because they see it's a challenge. We all know it's a challenge. Everyone wants to do great in their roles and they get great at their roles, but how can you really unlock that potential faster so that they feel successful? You feel like you can repeat that with the next groups coming in. And really just augment that experience. So that is what we're going to be looking to discuss through today. So very much looking forward to that. And I see a few more names popping in. Hi, Cola. Hi, Mary Kay. Hi, Jordan. Thanks everyone for joining us in there. So I guess maybe just to kind of level set where we're going to go today, as a people leader, you really do. You want to attract, you want to retain great people. And it's just becoming harder and harder to do, especially in the most recent years. So I know you would be familiar with attrition. It's always been a challenge. Even just a few years ago, you'd hear 30 to 40% attrition rate, which was a problem then. Maybe you're managing a few out. Some are moving on to other roles. Some are getting promoted. It's positive attrition. But in most recent years, that's really started to skyrocket when it comes to attrition rates. And we're starting to see customers come to us now with 65% and sometimes even upwards of 80% attrition across some of the more complex verticals. And so not only is this now added pressure in terms of, how can you really help people feel successful in their role so that they want to stay with you, but on the chance that they do leave as well, how can you really make sure as the operations leader or the training department, that leader making the impact on them, how can you really make sure that for that amount of time that they are spending with you as an employee, you're really able to gain benefit and you're seeing that productivity that you're investing in being also attributed back into your bottom line. And so that's what we're really going to talk to today, or what are some of those tangible opportunities that you can see and really start to accelerate that proficiency journey with them. So a few of the key themes that we're going to touch on today, and I'll say touch on because as you guys all know, probably any of these could be their own 2 to 3 day conference, but we really wanted to try to pick a few of these key ideas that we tend to see all the time. Share some of our experiences of what we see and how we help, but then also hear from you in terms of what are some of the other pieces that you're challenged with today, and some of the great things that you've got your folks doing and finding success with as well. So right off the hop, it's going to be really important that we kind of all share a similar definition of proficiency for today. So we'll define it and understand it in terms of how we'll talk about it together today. Spend a little bit of time discussing and identifying what are those common barriers when it comes to expediting the learning experience for your team members. We'll talk about a few proven strategies as well on how you can accelerate ramp time. So what are those tangible pieces that you can actually, work with and put some strategy around to move the needle there. Some of the things you might think that you're doing it today, and hopefully we can kind of peel off another layer of how that can even be excelled a little bit further. And how's that going to really unlock your ROI, your return on investment for your company faster? We've got a great case study we're excited to highlight for you. We'll share the link to where you can get some additional detail on that as well. But one of our customers, AbbVie, who's with Allerganic Aesthetics, have a fantastic onboarding. And so we'll talk a little bit about how they've changed their knowledge experience to really unlock a lot of that potential. And then just some of the financial impacts that might be associated with your proficiency journey as well. So that's kind of a goal of where we're going to spend some time chatting with today. So before we dive into that, one of the things that we'd love to do is really kind of give you a chance to understand what your particular onboarding experience is like today. So when we talk about proficiency, how many months within a role would you say it is that your team member, you've hired them, you've trained them, they've probably done some nesting and some OJT with you, they're now on the phone, they're learning, they're building that competency. When is it that you're seeing and you'd say, they're successfully contributing toward my bottom line now? They're more like a tenured agent. They're not making those mistakes. So what is that experience like for you? So we do have the calculator that I'd love for you to take. It just takes about 30 seconds. Some of you I know have done this already going into the meeting today, but if you haven't had a chance, it's a great opportunity to do it. So Adam is going to drop the link in there for you. It'll take you right to this calculator. And there's just 5 fields that you'll be able to fill out really quickly. So how many agents do you hire typically when it comes to a new hire training class? What's that size like? What's roughly your average hourly wage for your new hires? How many days is specifically your class time? Do you do nesting time? So nesting for us would be on the job training. So that phone time where you've got some dedicated coaches helping them while they're taking those live calls as well. And then what is that total ramp time? So what's that amount of months that you think it takes for your customer? So Adam's just popped that in. Thanks, Adam. So go ahead and while we kind of talk about the next piece, would love to hear in the chats what you get back as your specific number to this second part right in here. And I'll preface you to say you might see 70, you might see a negative result. So it's really about an individual experience for each of your organizations. And so the opportunity then lies in, well, how can you improve on that number? And that's the piece that we're going to dive into today. So we'll circle back with you to kind of get a poll of where that lands. So take a moment now and go ahead and go through that. So let's take a few seconds to define proficiency together. So if we all get on the same page, it's really that amount of time taken by a new employee to gain the required knowledge and skills to meet their performance expectations. So how long does it take that you would consider them really acting like a typical average agent or employee within your operation? And so, it's a lot of different things. So really the goal here, we can talk a little bit about the new hire experience. You could also generalize proficiency to be thinking about anytime they're learning something new. So maybe you're onboarding a new system, maybe you're onboarding a new person, maybe you're upskilling a person. So what is that time that you're introducing them to something new and they've now been able to master that or work independently at it, right? They might still need to reach for resources, but they're self-sufficient in doing so. They're not kind of having to ask an abundance of questions. They're not making those critical errors. So that's what we're looking for when we say proficient. So some of the characteristics that I would particularly picture if I think about a proficient agent, they've got confidence, right? Handling all of the different contact scenarios that are within their bucket of business. You see them meeting the quality scores of a tenured agent. So from a accuracy perspective, they're having great interactions. They're getting things right with their customers when we do have it. And they require minimal to no assistance from their supervisors at this point. So they might be reaching out to escalate a few questions, but they're not the ones who are calling in all the time. Instead, you're seeing them reach for knowledge articles. They might even now have become the SME on your floor that other people are reaching out to. So they're acting and able to be more in their self-serve roles as well. So that's what we're defining as proficiency today. Would love to hear in the chat if there's any other definitions that mean I guess that would stand out to you when we talk about proficiency. So Maria, I think if we could, we can go ahead and drop the first poll in there. I think everyone's probably had a chance to go online. So for those of you with us, and if you've had a chance to get your proficiency score from our calculator, please go ahead and fill it in below. So this is just to kind of get a baseline of where we're all at on this particular call. Again, there's no correct answer here. Be as honest as you can. And it's just more so to give us a sense of what that opportunity looks like. So was your score less than 0%? You got a negative, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that means. Between 1 to 10%, between 11 to 30%, 31 to 50%, 50 to 70%, or even higher than 70%. So go ahead and fill that out now, and we'll look forward to hearing what you have. So why does proficiency matter? So fundamentally, I will say, like, absolutely, I believe that no one wants to come to work and not perform their best. They might have the one or two offs who maybe a job is a job, but for the most part, I think we can probably all agree. When you sit down at work and you're ready to take on a task, you don't want to get it wrong. You want to be great at your role. You want to be seen as someone that you can rely on to get things done, that the more that you're getting things right with the customer, the better that is for the customer experience, but it's also great for the employee experience. And so, where can you help employees feel competent and confident about the role and help them understand how they're really making that impact? So with that in mind, I also believe that if you can unlock the opportunity for someone to see how they can be successful in their role faster, then they are going to be more likely to stay and create a career with you as well. So rather than start handing out resumes while they still, are in training and they're starting to feel that daunting experience of like, wow, I thought I could do this role, but can I actually do this role? It still feels really challenging to me. We're going live in 2 days, and I really haven't been able to feel like I can do this yet. And I'm still kind of, nervous about what that might look like. So removing that feeling of overwhelm and helping them understand really early on what success is going to look like and how they can best achieve it for themselves, and the support that you're giving them to help them get there as well, is really a key element here. And so why accelerating proficiency matters: it's going to improve their agent experience, right? Giving them that confidence early, helping them be successful. It is going to reduce your training and your onboarding costs. So rather than investing, it's an investment you need to make. It's absolutely critical. You want to invest in your people, but if you can instead invest in an 8-month training program or onboarding support system, and you can get that down to 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 3 weeks or 1 week, and you're not sacrificing quality, you're really just helping them have a more succinct experience about how to learn, but ultimately also how to be successful leaving the classroom much faster than what they might be experiencing today. That's significantly going to impact on your operational costs, because you're not going to have multiple coaches being pulled in for those lengths of time. You can really start to focus on a more scalable approach with that. So you're going to see some opportunity with your training costs. They're going to start contributing to your bottom line faster as well. So they'll not only be, able to achieve their own personal KPIs faster, they're going to be delivering on the quality. Ideally, you're going to see them coming out the door giving great first call resolution. They'll have that confidence, but you will start to see their objectives directly relate back to the broader business as well, and start to achieve their businesses faster. And it's really going to start to insulate you against an attrition problem. So if you can really nail down proficiency and maximize the amount of time spent in that role that you have that agent for, you've not kind of wasted that time that you're investing. And now maybe they are on to the new role. They're very ready for the next role. You've had a great opportunity to prepare them for that, but you really never got the chance to see them impact your operational metrics and your customer experiences. So the faster you can move the timeline up to be able to do so, now you've had a great opportunity to also impact your bottom line. So thanks, Maria. Just went ahead and shared the poll results. So we have a really good mix with our participants today. So it looks like the majority of folks are around 31 to 50% proficiency, 50 to 70%, and 11 to 30%, with a couple of folks also being in the more outlier group. So really great variability on the group today. So we're going to dive into a little bit about what this means. Thanks for sharing that, Maria. Actually, before we do that, maybe if you could just post the second poll as well, because that'll help give us some detail. So now that you've kind of all had a chance to learn about what your current state onboarding proficiency is from that calculator, I'd love for you to let us know as well, what kind of range we have on the call today when it comes to how long your particular training program is. And so this would be both your time spent in classroom in weeks as well as the OJT. So if you've got a 4-week training program and you do 2 weeks of on the job phone training, then the 6 weeks would be your answer. So we'd love to kind of get a sense of what that looks like for you as well. Perfect. So let's just visualize it a little bit. So a common onboarding ramp to proficiency problem. So what does it look like? I'm a new hire, I'm joining the business. In current state, so a lot of you ended up in around the 50% to 70% onboarding, so which means it's about a 6 to 8 month ramp to proficiency that you're experiencing within your contact center today. That's very common across the customers that we tend to work with daily. So what that looks like is illustrated here. So you're training and you're learning. So maybe you have a 6-week training program. I also have a couple of weeks of OJT in there. I'm very supportive. The training was excellent. And now I've gone ahead and I'm starting to do my my live calls. So I'm now post training. I'm in production. I'm assigned with my supervisor, and I'm learning and I'm continuing to grow and develop. But I'm still making a lot of the mistakes that a new hire tends to make, because it's the first time that I'm getting exposed to new call types. And so there is just still a lot of ramping up that I have to do over the next few months ahead. So, at that 8-month mark, that 9-month mark, you're looking at this employee and across the employee base and think, okay, great. 8 to 9 months is about that right time when they're now considered proficient. They're not making those mistakes anymore. They're starting to contribute. And so now you've got about a 3 to 4 month window where they're great. They're flying on their own. They're not requiring that extra support. They're really feeling confident and competent about what they're doing. But then the attrition problem comes back in at this point. And so, fundamentally, if we know that agents are leaving faster, and maybe 12 to 15 months is about the right time frame now, that we're either starting to see they're not a fit, you're managing them out, they're just moving on to another role, or potentially they're leaving the operation or the business itself for a brand new opportunity. And so you've kind of got that year to really maximize with them. And so within this 4 months, that's it. The relationship with the agent, they're onto their next role. And so what we really need to think about is, how can we switch this around so that what you're actually able to do is maximize the time being spent in classroom, so that it lives with them when they leave class. It's not a brand new sense of how they're going to be able to take that information forward. They've had the exposure within training where they're able to do more scenarios. They're getting their hands on more real life customer inquiries earlier through simulation, through a few other techniques that we'll talk about, but they're practicing, they're getting the exposure that they need while still in training. And so now when they hit the floor, day one within that transition, they're already starting to make all of the right moves with the customers, and they've really kind of bridged down on that ramp to proficiency gap. So you've now maximized almost an additional 5-6 months on what they're contributing to your bottom line now. So this is the goal that we're going to keep in mind today, is how can you flip that switch so that they're really contributing from day one. Maria, how are we doing on the poll? Do we have some answers coming through? Perfect. So a really good mix in here as well. So 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks tends to be about the norm of what we see coming in as well. 2 months time, so about 8 weeks, 12 weeks and nobody training for over 6 months. So six weeks and 3 months. Yeah. Okay. So that's fantastic. So then this would be your actual time spent in classroom with your OJT. And then typically we would assume there's probably a few months of that onboarding ramp up period in here as well. Would love to know with you guys as well, what are some of the tactics that you're doing within these classrooms? So with those, especially maybe with those of you who are scoring on the lower end, you're already within a kind of a 2 week total ramp up period. Would love to hear from you in chat. What does your training experience look like? If I'm a facilitator, am I front of the class? Am I using some exercises? Am I using some role play? Maybe if you just want to kind of throw into the chat what that looks like as a learning experience within your organization. We'd love to kind of get some of those nuggets from you as well. And we're going to touch on those in a little bit. So some barriers to proficiency. So we know it's going to be very key to accelerate this learning curve. So what we want to do is figure out what's really holding us back from that. What are some of the challenges that get in the way of being able to have our agents perform great work earlier? Because we know they want to. We know they're fantastic. You've attracted great talent. You're retaining great talent. And so, how can we just really help remove any of the pieces that are holding them back from being successful with their customers? And do we understand what it is that the customers are looking for? Specifically within these interactions as well to help them be their best selves. So I'd love to hear what are some of the top things for you that come to mind when you think about why ramp up periods are longer than you'd like them to be? So what barriers are you facing that might be holding you back from having proficiency faster? So I'm just keeping an eye on chat. Feel free to throw those in there for us as well. Adam, if you can keep an eye on that. And I'll share, I've got a few that for me tend to come up time and time again. We see these often. And these are ones that you can put some tangible strategies around. So long training schedules, we just saw within the chat, anything that's 3 months and longer, there's really some great opportunity in there. Even with the 4 weeks, 6 weeks, what type of training does that look like? Why does that training plan need to have that length of time? Are there multiple modules? What makes up that training time for you? So why, what's kind of impacting why we have that long training schedule? High attrition, we already talked about a little bit. So the more time that we spend investing in folks, but then they're out the door and you're right back to square one with needing to rebuild that skill set again. So how can you really maximize the time that you do have an employee before they're on to their next great role as well? There's too many call types to master. So agents have a really difficult role, right? I grew up in a contact center pretty much my whole life. And so I have a real good appreciation for what their day in life really is like. They have a ton of information that they need to be able to, to find, to articulate, to understand, to help escalate. Any customer could call about any slew of information. And their expectation is that the agent's going to be able to help with that. And so that's a very big undertaking. And so how many call types are we expecting a particular agent group to be able to handle? And what resources are we putting at their fingertips to help them be successful with that? Lack of automation, definitely more of a current conversation over the last couple of years as well. So a lot of manual inputs within a process as well. Is there opportunity within an agent's tech stack to be able to automate some of the things that will help them find information faster or do information, perform information faster as well? So what does the automation opportunity look like within your center? One of the areas we're going to really dive into together is just around the knowledge experience. And this is where personally I find the biggest opportunity in lifting not only someone's confidence, but helping them excel so much faster. You probably hear this with your agents today. It's hard to find information. We work with a lot of fantastic companies, really sophisticated companies, and even companies who have, 100% of their processes documented. The question is, how usable is what's documented to the agent? So a lot of the time, what you'll actually find is documentation becomes really hard to read. It becomes really hard to consume. And if I have a customer in my ear at that moment, I need to be able to find what I'm looking for at my fingertips, be able to make sense of it. Can't have ambiguous information in there. It has to be clear and concise and quick so that I can confidently give that back to my customer as well. And so a lot of the time that we start working with a customer or a prospect in this case, it tends to be that the knowledge experience is a great opportunity because yes, things are documented, but maybe they're written from a compliance point of view, or maybe they have a lot of great detail about why a procedure has to happen. But if I have to take that and put it in front of me as a brand new person and execute on that process, there's often some really key steps that aren't captured. That once I'm an agent and I'm doing the day to day, I figure these things out. I become proficient through exposure. But what if we brought that detail into the documentation for the agent so it's built for them? So there's some opportunity in there that we'll talk about. And then heavy reliance on support from escalation resources. So, one question I would really encourage you to take back to your internal team members is, what is our escalation, our tier 2 desk? So our senior agents, if you do have a team where you've got some fantastic agents who are the subject matter experts on your floor, what's that process feel like? If I'm a new hire, am I immediately calling that escalation when I need help? If I am, are they just giving me an answer, or are they helping me guide myself to be able to answer that for future? And so there's just all kinds of proficiency opportunity in there. That one, we don't want all those calls going over to the tier 2. We want to free them up so that if it is a high value question and a really complex scenario, that's what you want them to be available to be answering. So how can we really help them understand how to help drive proficiencies toward their new peers as well? And so we'll take a look at that. And then just a couple more in here. So reliance on memorization, we're going to talk about some learning strategies for adult learners. My memory is terrible. I need to write it down, or I need to know exactly where to go to find it. And we see that within the training experience as well. And I'm a former trainer, and there's nothing more disheartening than, you've just spent, 4 or 5 weeks with a particular training class. They're fantastic. They know all the daily answers when you're doing Q&A and all the practice in class. And then they go out on the floor, and that first call that they get, they don't know. And they say, well, we never covered this in training. And you're thinking, no, we probably spent, two full days on that module. But what's happening is, because it was very much maybe lecture style, I was at the front of the class, I was telling them about this great thing that they might come up against. They didn't get the context about what might happen if a customer asks it in a different way, or there's a slightly different reason that one customer might need it and one customer might not. And so relying on things on memory, it just doesn't click. And that just gets increasingly complicated, with adult learning audiences as well. So what can you do to take away the need to memorize information and make them really successful with being able to use the information that you're presenting them with through documentation? Inadequate practice and simulation during classroom learning. So one of the strategies that we'll take a look at is how to get people to touch the work that they're going to be doing a lot sooner as well, right? So how do you give them that chance to learn and fail and grow and practice within a safe environment? And then complex tech stacks, that's just here to stay now, right? We all understand that there's going to be a tech solution for pretty much everything. We're a tech solution as well. So how can you really help make that need for technology as simple as possible on your employee base as well? So what can you do to really, help pull all of that together, but also make it really successful for them to know which system should I be working in, depending on the type of request that I'm getting from my particular customer. So these are just a scratch of the surface of some of the barriers that you might be facing when it comes to achieving proficiency. Certainly, it's not an exhaustive list. So maybe if you'd like to share a little bit, and feel free to use the chat for this as well. So just thinking about the list that we just went through, what are some of the areas that you've focused on to improve proficiency for your new hires? The few that I've selected here that we're going to dive into deeply together, nowhere close to being, the be all end all. These are just some things that certainly we have experience with that you can impact for sure. Absolutely, for sure. And it's a hidden impact, because a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in a moment, you probably are doing within your operation. But the question is, how usable is it? Do people know it's there? And if they know it's there, do they understand how they can use it? And if they can't, what is it that's holding them back from that? So these are a few that I personally come across almost on a daily basis with a lot of the organizations when I initially start supporting them. And one thing that we're not going to talk about today, but I would feel remiss if I didn't mention this as well, is the key strategy to all of this as well is really communication. So, if you're an operations leader, really engaging with the training team as well, making sure you're super aligned on, what is the goal for the employee going through the onboarding process. And when you do hit that transition, what are your expectations on what they know at this point, what they've been exposed to? Do you expect them to know everything? Do you expect them to, to know just a certain piece of the business, depending on what your volume needs are? So keeping that open communication throughout as well is absolutely critical to knowing maybe what that proficiency opportunity is going to be, because maybe what you train them on in spring is going to look a little differently than if it's an October class, depending on the seasonality of your business as well. So really communicating closely between training operations and your agents and supervisors as well. So the first one that we're gonna take a peek with. So strategies to accelerate onboarding, adult learning principles. So resist overwhelm and overtraining. You might have 60 different buckets of work. You might have maybe, 10, 12 different call types that are really heavy, and nuanced within that are hundreds of different ways that an agent could really take that call and run with it. So personally, anytime that I can apply the Pareto principle to work, highly recommend. And within your new hire experience, absolutely, this can apply for you really quickly. So what you really want to think about doing, if you do have a 4-week window, if you can get that down to a 2-week window, whatever that absolute time is that you can have in class training, what you don't want to think about, and what I'd challenge you to maybe think about differently if this is your current state today, we don't want to try to just tell information, as much information as I can. I've been an agent for 4 years. I've been a trainer for 4 years. Let me help you learn everything that I've learned in that 4-year time within this 2 or 4-week window. So if that's how your training feels today, where there's a lot of lecture style and not a lot of practice, really start to think about, one, what are my agents actually retaining? So as they go through to proficiency, as they go through to transition, so they've done their training, they've done their OJT now, and they're starting their day one work, what have they retained? Are they retaining the key things that that they're going to be getting calls about? And if they're not, then I would really encourage you to look at your curriculum and try to pick out, what are those really big hitting items? Where's the 80% of our work coming from? What is that going to look like for your particular business? And that's where you really want to be spending the time with these new hires. What is their real day-to-day going to look like? And so if you don't know, what are those heavy hitters that you could be a little bit more specific about spending time on, some great resources that you can really start to look for internally. Reach out to your workforce management department or whomever might own call volumes for you. Ask them questions. What are the biggest call drivers that we get? What buttons are our customers hitting? What departments are they trying to get to? Or what call types are they identifying as most important to them? And that might change with seasonality. So again, this might be a conversation that you're going to want to have all the time. But we're in winter now, so if you have a spring spring related process, does it make sense to just include that, just to check the box and say that we've trained on it? Or would that really just overwhelm and kind of maybe push out some more pertinent information that you do want them to think about? So I would really recommend going through what your curriculum looks like, work really closely with your trainers, and be critical about it as well. Like, be very transparent to think differently about your training, and try to look for that opportunity to not overtrain your agents. We don't expect them to know your 4 years of expertise within a 4-year period. So what do you want them to be able to take away as those key elements? And the number one thing that you really want them to be able to think about differently is, if you don't remember how to do something, that's okay. We don't expect you to retain all of that. So have I done a good job of setting them up successfully to know where to go to find that information? And if everybody's first instinct is calling the escalation queue, then there's some work to be done within that opportunity as well. It's like, how can you help them fish for information and feel really confident that I might not know what a customer is looking for to be able to do that, but I definitely know where I can go to help them with that. So tons of opportunity in there. And I get excited about those conversations. So I'd love to take those offline together as well. take a look at your actual learning practices within your curriculum as well. So adults learn differently. I learned differently today than I did 20 years ago as a student for sure. 65% of the population are visual learners. So it means we like to look at something. We like to maybe be thinking about it, be touching it, really looking at graphs. We can, you know, take an image a lot easier than I can a body of text. And so how are we presenting information throughout the onboarding process as well? When you're giving them something new, is it really hard to consume text? Or is there some pictures? Is there some, you know, some video? Like what are they looking at that they can actually be able to take away and maybe have that stick a little bit more differently? And think about VARC modality. So if this isn't something on your training team's radar already, there's some fantastic stuff you can look into. So here again, you're going to see your visual learners. You've got an 83% more effectiveness when you're presenting things through visual. But then there's also the opportunity to be kinesthetic, and that's coming in when you're actually touching information as well. So when you're pairing being able to see and make sense and kind of just instantly click with the information that you're seeing, plus you pair that with the opportunity to do scenario-based learning by bringing in exercises, doing role plays, actually learning by doing the role plays rather than have me up and lecture and tell you everything that I know about it. Maybe give me some context about why we're going to get this call type. What's the goal of this customer interaction? What do we really hope to do for this customer when they call in for this interaction so that I understand the value in the work that I'm doing? And then put a scenario in front of me and have me walk through that and give me that exposure to what a real customer interaction is going to feel like and what it feels like to be putting those fields into the system as well. And that's a proven opportunity to be able to shrink that ramp time as well. And then the number one thing, and this is where we'd love to have some further dialogue with you for sure. So we have the pleasure of seeing some really, really well done knowledge articles. No one ever comes to us with nothing documented. Everybody always has something documented in terms of some sort of process knowledge that exists for your operation. And some people have 100% of all of their procedures documented and are still faced with the challenge of what people can do with that information. So typically when we start to look at some of the samples of documentation that we receive in terms of process intended for agents, a lot of the problems that stand out is they're really not written with the agent in mind. Maybe they're written from a compliance perspective. Maybe they're in step actions, but it's saying, if yes, keep going. If no, skip to page, 17B, paragraph 7. And so as an agent, you might try it a couple of times, but ultimately you end up kind of failing yourself out. You just start avoiding the use of that. It wasn't easy to use. I wasn't really sure if I actually got to the right paragraph. I probably, scrolled really quickly and actually skipped some key context that even though I thought I did the interaction really well, I missed a couple of steps along the way because it just wasn't intuitive for me to follow that information well the first time around. And so this is a lot of the areas that we talk about daily and where Procedureflow specifically makes a really critical impact for contact center operations and back offices as well, is getting rid of that overwhelm when it comes to data, right? When it comes to the information that's presented to you. We don't want agents not wanting to use your great documentation. You've spent the time, you've got a great knowledge department probably sitting down and building these out, and the content writers. And so how can we just put a different view on it, that we're taking the text out? And you can see right here, this is actually a sample of what Procedureflow looks like. It's visual workflows, and it's presenting them a story. So even just looking at this as an agent, I already know from familiarity with Procedureflow, I need to decide something, I need to do something. There's another exception I need to be aware of. And it's following me, helping me be really successful by following a path. And it's given me that visual instruction to do so, plus really clear and concise steps. And so what you want to think about is how can you help reduce that as an agent who has someone, in my ear, I want to give great service real time. It's easier to train from concise information. It's going to be bite-sized. It's consumable. I can not only find it, but I can also consume it and regurgitate it back to my customer really successfully in my own words. And it's also going to encourage self-service behavior. So I'm not going to feel myself out and avoid this new documentation. Now, instead of having to sit down and kind of give me all kinds of lecture style learning, you can teach me on how to find this information. And if I can follow a flow really successfully and understand how the information is being presented to me as an agent, you can actually now stick any information in front of me, and I'll be able to just consume it that much faster and perform it almost immediately as soon as you do that. And in some cases, we actually see customers put brand new processes in front of their agents, and they can perform that work within 30 minutes. It's quite remarkable. And so, how can you do that? And the other piece that tends to come in as a difficulty with long text-based documents as well is they're super hard to maintain. So it's outside of today's scope of conversation. But if you are having difficulties, because we all know within a contact center, change is the only constant, right? There's process changes happening every day. It's absolutely necessary to get any new process change information into the fingertips of agents as fast as we can, because as soon as information's outdated, unfortunately, I've potentially given a bad customer experience. Maybe that customer I have right now should have gotten a different outcome because we did make some changes, but I haven't checked my email, or I didn't read the right part of the update to be able to know what's real as well. Or I've file saved as my own version, and I'm working off of 3 versions ago, and actually not, working from the latest and greatest. And so that needs to be called out as well, and figure out how can you be working on and ensure all of your customers are working on a single source of truth that is up to date and giving accuracy to your customers as well. So I do want to share a little bit of a case story. I know we have about 10 minutes to go. So a time check here. Yeah, about 15 minutes to go. So we do have a customer I want to highlight for you who's kind of gone through this exact knowledge experience journey. They have a fantastic training program. They have fantastic trainers in place, but still proficiency was a challenge for them. And so they had to kind of critically look at it and figure out what were those opportunities. And so knowledge experience became that obvious opportunity for them, which allowed us the opportunity to work really closely with them. So I do want to share a little bit about Allergan Aesthetics with you as well. They are a fantastic company. They're an AbbVie company. And just some background about them. So they're part of the pharmaceutical industry. They have absolutely really extremely complex and technical procedures. There's tons of specific product knowledge that their agents need to know, tons of exceptions that their agents need to be able to, to facilitate with the different callers that they have. Not everybody's calling in asking for the exact same thing. And so what's the level of expertise that they can really, help their customer base with? And so when they first began digging into what was holding their teams back, it was really clear that knowledge was the opportunity. So some of the things that they were dealing with business-wise, and you probably have a few of these yourselves. So there were multiple platforms that an agent needed to be able to go to access information. So maybe there's a SharePoint, there was a OneNote, there's different knowledge articles, and were those, saved and living in the files of the desks of the agents themselves, or were they housed somewhere more centrally? So there was just tons of information living in multiple places. And that was hard for the agents to understand, well, which knowledge should I reach for, and where do I go to find the right piece of knowledge that I'm looking for? So it's hard for them to remember which system housed what type of information. And then, just like we talked about, processes were changing and being updated all the time. So it became even more difficult for agents to get things right, despite wanting to do so and being very competent to do so. It was just really hard to know if I was reaching and grabbing the right information for that customer at that particular time. So they weren't only just seeing this as an onboarding and attrition problem and a proficiency problem, they were also seeing this reflected in their first call resolution. So they were having huge volumes of customer callbacks because maybe the customers weren't receiving the latest and greatest because of the constant change to their processes. So they would actually have hundreds of calls coming back in, either based on a service error or just that something was outdated in the way that they were helping that customer. So we were fortunate enough to begin working with them. They purchased Procedureflow. And really the key goal that they have was to simplify the agent effort when it comes to knowing how to perform their job well, and through that, the knowledge experience. So some of the opportunities that they were able to gain through implementation, we simplified where do I go for information? So Procedureflow became one single source of truth. And so in saying that, I just want to clarify as well, it doesn't mean you always are getting rid of any other systems. what Procedureflow allowed them to do was create one single source of truth that their agents could go to. And if I did need to be redirected to another system where maybe it was critical for that other piece of knowledge to remain, or a system that I needed to reach out to, it became almost the GPS that as long as I went into Procedureflow, I was being directed and deflected immediately to that right place that I needed to be at my fingertips. So they didn't have that before. It was kind of a guessing game on, where do I get to go to? Where do I need to be right now? Part of the procedure as well was really removing any old, outdated, if there was, we have a term internally here called versionitis. Does your organization have multiple versions in play at any time of a procedure? Maybe I saved, version 3 on my desk, but we're actually working off of version 5 now. And I'm a great analyst, but I'm 2 versions behind. And so there's some liability in that of, am I actually delivering the proper service to my customers as I give them. So we wanted to really help identify, is that an issue here? And so they removed a lot of duplicate and outdated information, ambiguous information. So again, within text heavy documents, you don't mean to, but sometimes it's just not clear for the agent who has to be able to perform the information that's within those content documents. Is it super crystal clear about how they should be taking the steps forward to help this particular customer for this interaction? So we introduced them to visual process flows. We introduced them to the visual language with Procedureflow. There's only 7 shapes. We keep it dead simple on purpose because it's all about driving consistency. It's really that piece from adult learning that we talked about earlier. How do you really help make it really simple for customers for your employees, I should say, to know what's presented in front of me and what do I need to do with that information? And so we introduced them to that thought of what is a process flow. And the key thing that was really fundamental to all of this was it's not about being able to memorize what's in those flows. Can you help your employees know how to drive through information successfully? So we have a top to bottom approach. We map those exceptions out to the side. And so we spent lots of great time meeting their team and working with their team and really fundamentally helping understand, how can you lay down a process with that agent in mind? And to do so, we actually included the agents as well. So we really wanted to bring their expert agents to the team as subject matter experts and figure out, what isn't in the documentation today, which is really well done. But it's a gap for the agent to be able to perform work and ideally remove those callbacks from happening. So we involved everybody in the process. And on top of that as well, we actually went right into the classroom. So how can you not just have these great flows transformed for agents to use, but how can you expose them to people earlier? We want that to be a really consistent behavior experience that all agents are feeling that what I'm trained on in classroom is then going to be that thing that I'm used to touching and navigating with every day as well. So that became a really consistent experience as an employee as well. What this ended up being as well for them was a major reduction in training time. So 66% decrease in their new hire training duration. And that actually opened up the opportunity to have more time to actually teach on soft skills. So it wasn't just about, what is this process? It's now also this time that was freed up for them on, well, how do we want to interact with our customer base and what are our service expectations when that looked like. So they were able to actually dedicate more time that they had been wanting to do toward optimizing their service behavior skills as well. So that was a great bonus. And then through Procedureflow, they also gained data-driven insights on how their flows are being used. So in previous platforms, you hope people are clicking on it, but there really wasn't that data trail to kind of understand, well, where are my people asking for help? What are they trying to click on? Does it align with my call volumes? If I'm seeing, 50% of calls are in a certain area and nobody's reaching for those knowledge articles, is that good or is that bad? Or is that going to align with my escalations queue when I go and look at those? So now we were also able to arm them with information on where are your folks looking for information as well. So we do track all of the click traffic through Procedureflow. And so understanding these insights was also a powerful tool for them to be able to arm their operations with some know-how on where people are looking for support. So through all of that, amazing results. If you've heard of Botox, that they have National Botox Day, and specifically on Botox Day, we were able to measure from a year over year increase. The year prior to Procedureflow, they had over 300 callbacks to the operation specifically on this day. And you can imagine the volume of calls. It's quite an amazing event that they put on. And then that reduced not by 91%. They only had 31 callbacks the following year of people who were looking for a little bit more information from their service. So just absolutely tremendous impact. And some of the other things that they ended up having as bonus here as well. So their training time reduced. Specifically for the Botox event, it was 3.5 hours only to train agents on, here's what we're going to be getting. We're getting Botox calls all day, 3.5 hours for their internal agents. And they do hire outsourcers specifically for this event. And so with no exposure to it before, they were actually able to train those outsourced agents within only 1.5 hours. And so what was really cool as an added bonus throughout all of this was when they did look at the AHT, the average handle time for the day, to kind of understand, well, what was the productivity difference between my tenured hires and my brand new people who hadn't seen these procedures before. They actually were able to give exactly the same productivity service to their customers that day. So the talk time and hold times were absolutely aligned, which was pretty fantastic to see. So we do have that. I see that Adam has gone ahead and posted the Allergan aesthetic link to the success story. So please, I encourage you to read more. That's just kind of a little scratch of the great details that they've done. And shout out to Paul and Lisa who drove this event for them internally. They're fantastic to work with. We learn from them all the time. So I do encourage you to check out more detail on that and certainly reach back out to me with any questions that you may have. So I do.
Hey, Jaclyn.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to bring your attention to the question from Mickey.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. I just caught that. So what is the average build time to convert existing trading to this platform? So that's a fantastic question, Mickey. It's definitely one that we get offhand. And I will say it does depend. So one of the strategies that we really work through closely with you, we have an amazing service delivery team at Procedureflow. And one of the things that we really like to try to do is understand for your particular business, like how many processes do you have today? And like we talked about the Pareto rule earlier, what are those heavy hitters for you? So what's that opportunity it's really complex work, plus it has a ton of volume within it. That's where we really like to spend the time understanding. So I would say I don't have a one and done answer for you, but I would say on average, we would typically do about a 90-day implementation. But once we kind of have that chance to scope out with you, we've stood things up really successfully in 30 days time, and we've stood things up really successfully in as much as 9 months time, depending on how many processes that are critical to your business to have supported. So would love to, I know Adam's going to throw my email in the chat, so would certainly love to explore that with you more and learn a little bit more about your business to help give you a more finite answer there for sure. Great question. Did I see any other questions in the chat, Adam? I just want to make sure I didn't overlook anything.
No, I think we're all cut off.
Okay, perfect. So really just in wrapping up, some of the recaps for today, it's really about the people, right? So if we think about what changes you're trying to do for people, they're the constant within your proficiency experience, and process is the constant within the proficiency experience. So how can you really unlock and dig into that knowledge potential? Because if you can make that easy for your folks to find information, to reach for information, and to know what to do with that information for their customers and for their peers as well, who are probably shoulder tapping or popping up on their MS Teams chat, that's just going to contribute to your success, right? So how can you remove those barriers holding them back for success? Rising attrition, it's not going anywhere. I hope that it does. So really becoming more critical that we do, strive for faster competency development. So coaching is another opportunity, right? The training experience itself, but specifically within the knowledge experience, the biggest opportunity that we see that's tangible, and it doesn't take a lot of time to make that impact and get your return on investment very, very quickly, is by looking at how you're presenting that information to your teams today. So if we're doing memorization as part of your core training program, that's a huge opportunity. How can we really get them touching and feeling and practicing live scenarios in the classroom so that they really feel more confident? They'll still have nerves, of course, right? It's a day one thing. I even had nerves for today, but how can you help them have exposure to the different types of real work that they're going to be doing before they get to that on-the-job training. And the self-serve knowledge capabilities. This is my number one for sure. So teach me to fish. Don't teach me to, to have to do that. So if you can help someone understand, you might want to give the question, and here's your opportunity with your escalations. If they're calling over, don't just give me the answer. Also point me back for future on where can I find that for future. Can I star it? Can I bookmark it? Do I understand that there might be some different context that I need to know? Help me understand what to do so I can get self-service behaviors instilled for myself and for my team members for future, because that's all going to trickle into your proficiency and your bottom line for sure. And then be collaborative. So, with your training team, have constant conversations. If you're in operations, bring in your full operations team. Don't just go to your direct leaders. What are they hearing from their agents, from their trainers, from their senior level agents? Everybody has a little bit of a different experiences. And so if you can really start to tap into their feedback for you, it'll really start to kind of bring light to what those opportunities are within your documentation or within your learning materials that are potentially creating those barriers for your teams today. So that is the I guess the wrap up in terms of what we kind of wanted to touch on with you today. If you liked this conversation, please reach out to me. I'd love to continue chatting through some of it. I also love chatting through all things coaching strategies and reinforcement of your change as well. So please don't be a stranger. Would love to continue these conversations. And Adam is going to drop in the chat as well. We didn't necessarily demo the solution today. So if you haven't had a chance to see Procedureflow and you are kind of wondering, what does the knowledge look like? Why is it different? Why am I saying it's different? I am saying it, and it actually really is. It's a shift on how information has probably looked in your center before. And it really does work. It's simple to use, simple to find, simple to update, and we love to show it to you for sure. So please feel free to book directly with us for a demo. So maybe I'll just pause there in case there's some other questions trickling in. Perfect. Thanks for dropping that, Adam. Fabulous. Well, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out with us today. Hope it struck a chord a little bit in terms of some of the opportunities you've got that you can start having some conversations with your internal teams about. And please do reach out to us. We love to talk all things knowledge experience. So fantastic chatting with y'all today. Have a great day ahead. Talk soon.